السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Inshallah, we're starting again our series. We had left off with Surah Quraysh. We finished Surah Quraysh, and the next surah that we're covering in the last 10 surahs of the Quran is Surah Al-Ma'un. And inshallah, just bear with the screen, it's going on and off. But it's Surah Al-Ma'un, and Surah Al-Ma'un is the 107th surah of the Quran in the current order that we have it. It's the 17th surah to be revealed according to Ibn Ashur, rahimahullah. It is Tafsir, the 17th in the succession to the surahs that were revealed in the order they were to the Prophet ﷺ. The period of revelation of the surah is interesting. Some scholars consider it to be a Makki surah, meaning it was revealed entirely before the migration of the Prophet ﷺ to Medina. Other scholars hold that it was a Madani surah, meaning it was revealed entirely after the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina. And the interesting opinion is that half of the surah, or the first 3 ayat, were revealed in Mecca before the migration, and the other 4, the last 4 of the 7, were revealed in Medina after the migration. And we understand that parts of the Quran were revealed at different times, not just surahs, but even parts of those surahs. So Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, is a huge surah, and not all of it was revealed at one time. So it was revealed in pieces and pieces, and the Prophet ﷺ told them to put this ayah after this ayah, and so on and so forth. So it's very likely that this surah as well is the same, and that's part of the miracle as well. That the first half of the surah is revealed years earlier, and the next half of the surah is revealed years later. Yet when put together, it makes one complete message that can be read from beginning to end without any seemingly, no separation in between. So it seems like it's just one pure surah, but this is more likely the correct opinion, that it's half Makki, half Madani. Again, these are things that ulama, they analyze based on the statements of the companions and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and the Tabi'een, the followers or the students of the Sahaba as well. It has various names. Again, the names are just titles given to the surah based on words that are contained in these surahs. Now when I say the word surah, I use the Arabic word surah instead of the English translation chapter, because when we say chapter, it refers to what comes to mind is, well, this chapter covers this one topic. That's how chapters are in the English language. The word surah, which we translate as chapter, it just means that this is one specific group of ayat that Allah Azza wa Jal chose to combine and put as one whole. Okay, so that's all the word surah really means. The word surah in Arabic is used for like a fence. So something that encompasses something else, right? So the word surah I choose to use that word more than the word chapter because I don't want the idea being that, this chapter covers this topic, right? So that's why I continue to use the word surah, which means this group of ayat is the one that was chosen by Allah to, this was the beginning, this was the end, and this was the middle, and there is a wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and the message contained therein. And the names are the same. The names are just titles. So the names don't signify that the surah talks only about this. With the shorter surahs, and with some specific surahs, that is the case. Short surahs usually cover one topic. The longer ones, Al-Baqarah for example, the second surah, it's so huge, and the name that is given to it is the cow. Right? And there's only one instance, or one ayah or so that's mentioned, or one story that's mentioned about the cow. And it's just called that because that's what makes that surah stand out. So this surah is called Al-Ma'un because that's what makes this surah stand out. Right? The word Al-Ma'un is not really used in the Quran anywhere else other than the surah, so it's referred to as Al-Ma'un. Other names, Ara'ayta, that's the first word of the surah. Ara'ayta, so they call it Surah Ara'ayta. They call it Surah Ad-Din. Ad-Din again because the word Ad-Din comes in the surah, and they call it Surah At-Takdhib because Ara'ayta alladhi yukadhibu bid-din. Have you seen the one who makes takdhib of the deen, who denies the religion, or denies the day of account, the day of recompense? So these are some other names, and it's common for surahs to have many names. We just end up knowing them by one, the one that the certain scholars or the majority of the people agree on. But it's common for surahs to have more than one name. So the word Ma'un, the name of this surah, actually refers to things of benefit or assistance that people commonly borrow and lend. Right? And we'll talk more about that in the last verse, last ayah, when we get to that statement. This surah, it mentions certain characteristic traits, certain behaviors of people who reject the idea of a hereafter, reject the idea of standing before Allah and being responsible for what they did in this world. So it presents some of the worst type of characteristics that these people could do. And we'll see that as we get into the surah as well. So who are these? Who was they revealed about? So because the surah begins with, have you seen the one who denies the day of recompense, the day of judgment. Right? So who is this one that is being talked about? There are different opinions amongst the scholars, and all of these things apply. And the general rule for the Quran is, even if it is talking about somebody specific, that lesson applies to everybody. And that lesson applies to everybody. So the general description, whoever fits in, this surah applies to them. But part of the miracle of the Quran is at the same time that it's exposing people and it's showing the true nature of certain people that were at the time of the Prophet ﷺ himself. So it's said that this surah was revealed about Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira or Al-As ibn Wa'il or Abu Jahl, and there's a specific story of Abu Jahl, we'll share that inshallah. These were three of the staunchest enemies of the Prophet ﷺ, and they never accepted Islam. Abu Sufyan radiallahu anhu became a Muslim at the conquest of Mecca, but he was also known for some of these characteristics before his Islam. And inshallah, he's obviously excused for that. That was before his Islam. But once he became a Muslim, obviously we say radiallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him, because he's a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. And there's also a reference to that it was revealed about a hypocrite in Medina who has not been really named. So these are the people that have been specifically mentioned. Now Abu Jahl, since the surah just as a overview, it talks about, have you seen the one who rejects the day of judgment, when you will stand before Allah and be judged for your deeds? That is the one who is yadu'ul yatim. He is the one who is harsh and harshly turns away the orphan. Right? وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, and he does not encourage neither himself nor others to feed the poor people. Right? So these are some common misbehaviors or bad traits that some of these people had. And there's a story with Abu Jahl that he was sitting with the leaders of Quraysh, and this is to show that this was something that existed. They were very harsh towards the orphans. Right? An orphan is somebody who's lost his father. He has no protection, right? And the money of the orphan that he's inherited from his father when he passed away before he was born or whatever, goes to somebody who is now in charge of that orphan, and they take care of the orphan. They give him money as needed. So the Quran actually tells us rules on how to deal with the orphans, right? So the money that belongs to him, you don't give it to him or her until they're able to make proper decisions for themselves, but you take care of them with that money. So the common thing that would happen pre-Islam or with the Quraysh was that they would use it as an excuse to steal the money of the orphan. So Abu Jahl was responsible for one of the orphans, and he was sitting with the leaders of the Quraysh, and this young orphan came to him, and almost naked. He had no clothes, right? He had not even clothes enough to cover his whole body, and he came to Abu Jahl begging him to give him some of the wealth, which is his wealth, which he is in charge of because he's too young right now, so he can buy some clothes and things like that. So Abu Jahl basically, he was rude, and he hit him, he turned him away, very harsh with him. The leaders of Quraysh that were sitting around, they were laughing at it. So none of them, they were all okay with this bullying type behavior. And so he turned him away harshly. And then as a joke, they told the young orphan, why don't you go to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he'll give you what you need. So they were just doing it as a joke. The orphan had no idea what's the relationship between Abu Jahl and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has no idea what's going on. So he goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam out of his innocence and tells him, they told me to come to you because you'll help me, you'll give me something. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his nature was that when people came to him with a need, he never turned them away. Even if he couldn't help them, he would give them some kind words or something, but he wouldn't turn them away. He wouldn't leave them empty-handed or empty-hearted at least. So he went with the orphan to the house of Abu Jahl. He knocked on the door. The leaders of Quraysh are outside. They're watching everything as it takes place. Abu Jahl opens the door. He's very, very receptive to the Prophet at this time. He goes back inside his house. He gets money and he gives it to him, and it's given to the orphan. And the Quraysh, the other leaders, are like, what's going on here? This is ridiculous. He was just turning him away. Now he comes and he just gives it to him. So they go to his house and they say, you've accepted his religion. How could you treat him so nicely in this? You've accepted his religion. And so Abu Jahl said, no, I have not accepted his religion, but I swear that when he came to my door, I saw to his right and to his left a spear. It was like a spear that was just ready to stab me if I didn't listen to him. So he submitted to the Prophet. He was scared. Allah made him see things that nobody else could see. He made him see like a spear on either side of the Prophet, and the Prophet ﷺ was upset that how dare you treat this orphan this way. And he was upset when he went to his house. He demanded that this orphan be given his right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aided the Prophet by making Abu Jahl see two spears on either side, and he was so frightened that he just went back inside his house, gave the wealth, and gave it to the kid. So what this story shows you is that this is how they commonly treated the orphans, right? They took advantage of them, and everybody else, the leaders, they were okay with this. And this is one of the behaviors of the Jahiliyyah, of ignorance that they had. The strong amongst them would devour the weak, right? As Ja'far ibn Abi Talib described in front of the king of Abyssinia when they migrated, he said, the strong amongst us would devour the weak. they would take advantage of the weak. So this is how they were. So this surah shows us some of these things. The connection of this surah to the one before it. Right? So we did Surah Quraysh before it, and why is this surah placed after Surah Quraysh? At the end of Surah Quraysh, Allah says, الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. Allah is the one who fed them or gave them a state of where they're having their meals and everything, instead of keeping them in a state of hunger. And Allah is the one that has given them a state of safety rather than keeping them in a state of fear. So these are Allah's blessings on them. So when Allah is telling them specifically that Allah has fed them, given them food, now He's censuring them, rebuking them for not providing food to the ones that need it and not providing wealth to the ones that need it. So Allah is telling them that this is how I've blessed you, yet this is how you behave. Right? Allah, this is how He is treating the people, His creation, yet this is how you are treating Allah's creation. So Allah is being generous and expects you to be generous, but this is how you are treating the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also the worship of Allah Azza wa Jalla as well, we'll see that. So getting into the surah, the first three ayat, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. The rough translation, have you seen the one who denies the deen? We'll talk about that in a second. For that is the one who drives away the orphan and does not encourage the feeding of the poor. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens the surah. And He opens it with a question. أَرَأَيْتَ, have you not seen? Or haven't you seen? Or didn't you see? And this questioning that comes when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is used to create interest in a topic. Right? It's used to create interest in a topic, and it's also used to show surprise or shock. That how can this person be behaving this way? Or how can this person believe this? Or how can this person be acting in such a way? So this is what the questioning is for. So when we read this, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي, it's a question obviously begs an answer. Right? When you ask a question, there has to be an answer. But you'll see that how this is stated. So أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ, have you seen the one who denies the deen? And so people wonder now, naturally, well, who is this person that Allah is talking about? Now he clarifies. فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي, that is the one who drives away the orphan and does not encourage the feeding of the poor. The word deen here is the same as it's used in Surah Al-Fatiha. مَالِكِ يَوْمِ الدِّينِ, master of the day of judgment, when He's going to judge you for what you did. Right? So the same thing is the meaning here, the day of judgment, the day of account, the day of recompense, when awards and rewards and punishments will be handed out. So these people, naturally, they rejected the idea of an akhirah, of a hereafter. This is one of the things. Right? In Surah Al-Naba we hear, عَمَّ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ. What is it that they're asking each other about? About this great news. And this great news is the hereafter. So most of the Quraysh did not believe that after they died, they will be resurrected and then they will be held accountable. They did not believe this at all. And this is why one of the main messages in the Quran is the fact that there will be an akhirah, you will die, you will be resurrected, you will stand, and you will be judged, and you will be rewarded or punished. This is one of the three main topics of the Quran. Right? One of the three main topics of the Quran. And they did not believe this whatsoever. So this is the one who drives away the orphan, because he rejects the idea that there is, I'm going to be judged for my deeds anyway. So when you don't believe that your actions are going to have consequences, especially major consequences like paradise or hellfire, then it doesn't matter what you do. Right? It doesn't matter. If I have power, I can do whatever I want. Who's going to question me? Who's going to punish me? No one's going to do anything about it, right? Because there is no consequence. And if I have, wealth, I can do whatever I want with it. I can take it away from people. I can take advantage of people. These are the kinds of behaviors that come when you don't accept the fact that you will be judged and given a consequence for the things that you do in this world. So this is why this person behaves this way. The next one, for that is the one who drives away the orphan. Right? فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ. Now here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going and he's almost singling out somebody. That's where the scholars, they try to figure out who is this person that these ayat are talking about. Is it Walid ibn al-Mughira? Is it Al-As ibn Wa'il? Is it Abu Jahl? Right? Is it one of these people? And the truth is, it is these people that behave this way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing fingers at them, describing them, because remember the story of Abu Jahl, what happened when the orphan came to him, he turned him away harshly, and everybody was there, they were watching this, right? So they know who behaves this way. They know who it is that behaves this way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually targeting these people directly as well as teaching us a lesson. So the one who doesn't accept the idea of consequences for his actions, he is the one who will end up driving the orphan away. Now this is something you don't have to be irreligious to understand, that this is a horrible, horrible thing to do. To mistreat somebody who is powerless, who is just so defeated, he has no father, he has no support. He is so weak, and then you are so powerful, and you're picking on the weakest. This is a horrible, horrible character trait. This is something just absolutely inhumane. Then why would you treat somebody that has no power to defend themselves, no support, like no one to go to? You're the one responsible, taking responsibility of their wealth, and you are very powerful, and you're picking on these people. This is like what we call bullying, literally what we call bullying, but from the most powerful to the most weakest. The powerful are bullying the weak in this way that they turn them away. And Abu Jahl has the wealth that belongs to this boy, but he doesn't give it to him. He just turns him away. He hits him. Another story of Abu Sufyan before his Islam, that somebody came asking, he sacrificed an animal, and one of the orphans came asking him for some meat from the animal, and he hit him with a stick. I mean, this is how he hit him with a stick. This is how he treated him. So the powerful taking advantage of the weak. This happens when you don't understand that Allah is going to judge you for the things that you do. You don't care what you do. Nobody's going to stop you from what you do. So this is taking a general trait and pointing it out so people can recognize these people. So Allah, the Prophet, this is coming out of the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ. So he is openly censuring the behavior of some of the leaders of Quraysh as well. That's also happening in this surah. Turns away the orphan, obviously in a rude and disgusting manner, and doesn't give the orphan his rights and eats up his or her wealth. This is all referring to all these things, because the wealth of the orphan rests in the hands of an adult until that orphan is able to make decisions for themselves. They call it rushd, right? He has the ability to discern between right and wrong. And then he's supposed to get, or she's supposed to get her wealth so she can, or he or she can deal with it however they want. But this is the second description after rejecting the deen, the Day of Judgment. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, and He does not encourage the feeding of the poor. Now what's interesting about this ayah, it's translated as the feeding of the poor, but the ayah actually says طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Ta'am means food, and when you add it to miskin, it means the food of the poor person. Right? This is what's called mudaf ilayh in Arabic, meaning you have like a structure if you say the Kitabullah, right? The book of Allah, it belongs to Allah. طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, the food belongs to the miskin. So Allah is saying they do not encourage themselves nor each other upon giving the food that belongs to the miskin. Right? And that's because وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Allah tells us in the Quran and other places that in the wealth of the believers there is a right, a known right for those who ask and those who don't have enough. So our wealth doesn't just belong to us. There is an expected amount or an expected right in the wealth that we have that's supposed to go to the miskin, to the poor person. That's supposed to go to the mahroom, the one that doesn't have much. That's supposed to go to the sa'il, the one that asks, right? The one that doesn't have and he comes and asks, the one that doesn't ask. But your wealth is not supposed to be just kept to yourself. It has a right that belongs to other people. Why? Because Allah is the one that gave you the wealth, and He is the one that decided you're supposed to share it with other people. Right? So there is a right in the wealth that they have. That's why it says ta'am al-miskin. And they do not encourage upon giving the poor the food that belongs to them. So it's worse if you think about it, if I have food and somebody comes and asks, and I don't give them my food, right? Because I say, no, this is my food. But if I have 2 plates, right, and this one belongs to this person, and he comes and asks for his food, and I say, no, I'm not going to give you your food. Now that becomes, right, a bad character. That becomes rude. That becomes just inhumane. This belongs to this person. This person needs it, and you're not giving it to him. So Allah is telling us that the wealth you have, in it is the amount that's supposed to be going to the poor people. In it is the amount that you're supposed to be feeding the poor people with and giving to them as well. So this is the structure of the ayah. وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَىٰ طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, and they don't encourage the giving the poor the food that belongs to them. طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Unfortunately, the translation says feeding the poor. It does apply. Obviously, we're feeding them from the wealth that we have, but the structure of the verse, the structure of the ayah is the food that belongs to them. They don't give them the food that belongs to them. Imam Ibn Ashur in his Tafsir, he says, this is a declaration. These 3 ayat, these 3 verses are a declaration that iman, or faith, or belief in the resurrection and the accounting is the true deterrent which places in the soul the ability to do righteous deeds until that becomes second nature for the one who is raised on this action. So he's saying that when you have this idea firm inside your heart that you are going to be held accountable for the things that you do, this is what stops you from doing the horribly wrong things. This is what makes you recognize I've done something wrong. This is what keeps you doing the good deeds that you need to do in order to get that good judgment, that good score in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He calls this a deterrent. The belief in the hereafter is a deterrent from doing bad or from obviously not feeding the poor in this sense is a bad thing, because in your wealth is a right that belongs to them, the poor anyways, right? So this becomes a bad thing. Then he says the soul becomes pure by doing this, and doing good becomes easy, like natural. Doing good just becomes easy for it. It does not need someone to command or stand over it or to be made fearful. Right? So when people, and you think about it this way, a lot of people do good things. A lot of people follow the rules. A lot of people drive the speed limit because they're scared that they're going to get ticketed. They don't drive the speed limit because they want to obey the law. Is that true or false? A lot of people, they drive the speed limit because they don't want to get, caught by the police officer hiding in the woods or something and get a ticket. Not because it is the law or I should obey the speed limit. So this is the difference he's trying to point out here. He's saying that when a person has the day of judgment in mind, he does the right things because they are the right things to do. Not because somebody else is watching them. Right? And that's going to be the next ayat to talk about those who show off. But he prays when he's by himself. Right? He prays all by himself. No one there to watch him, he prays. When he's fasting, no one's there to watch him, he doesn't eat. Right? When somebody comes and asks him for something, he helps them out and he doesn't go and boast about it. He doesn't go and tell. So you're not in need for recognition or things like that. You do these things because they're the right things to do. Not because somebody's always watching you. And he says the people that depend on this, that depend on supervision, that they have to have somebody standing over their head to do the right thing, what that ends up happening is that when they're alone, they end up falling into a whole bunch of sins and a whole bunch of evil things, right? Because they're dependent on somebody to watch over them. And this comes a good point when it comes to parenting, right? When it comes to parenting and you're watching your child pray and he's messing around in his prayer and you're watching him saying, I'm watching you. But when you're not watching him, what's he going to do, right? When you're not watching him. So you want to teach them that it doesn't matter if I watch you. What matters is Allah is watching you. What matters is you do the right thing, right? It's a harder point to teach, but it comes by practicing. Right, and that's what we say, that we have this phrase that character is taught. The character is caught, not taught. Right? There's a lot of things that you have character education programs in schools and things like this, but there's a very important thing to remember: that character is caught. You can't teach it, but it's something that people get from observing and spending time with other people. The way you are is the way your kids are going to be. Right? So the best way to make our kids worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perfectly when they're all by themselves is to make sure we do the same thing. Right? And then that'll naturally be something that will come off, rub off on them as well. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Right? After he says, and that's the person that doesn't give the poor people their food, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Then woe to those who pray. Now this ayah and the next ayah, the Qur'an, the reciters of the Qur'an, they always recommend you read these ayat together. And you don't stop here. Why? Because فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, if you stop here and you say, woe unto those who pray. We pray all the time. We're the ones that pray. It's an incomplete sentence. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Those who are heedless of their prayer. So woe to those who pray, those who are heedless of their prayer. I know the screen is acting up a little bit. So the word woe, W-O-E. We see this in the Quran. وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. In this ayah, what does this word mean? That is way. And it's translated as woe, W-O-E, woe. It refers to something evil or bad happening to you. That's the linguistic definition of the word. Something evil or bad befalling you, that's considered way. So the Arabs would say, waylak, something bad happened to you. How can you say this, right? And also, it specifically is a name for one of the valleys in the hellfire. It's a name for one of the valleys in the hellfire. So whenever you see woe unto such and such people, that's a huge red light that should go off in your head. That you do not want to act like these people. Because these people, Allah says, woe, wayli is the Arabic word, and woe unto these people means this woe is referring to a place in the hellfire. Meaning people who make this a habit are the people that are going to end up in this valley. So we don't want to be amongst these people. So it's a very strong word. And we tend to read over it because, again, in English, it's not a very powerful word, right? Woe unto these people. It doesn't sound like anything bad or anything serious. But it's a very serious word. It's a name for the valley of the hellfire. It's called way. And this is something that Allah is saying that these people deserve. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Those who pray. Now, those who pray and who are heedless of their prayer. But let's the first part for those who pray. Now, again, when we said this ayah was either Makki or Madani, right? Either it was revealed before the migration or after the migration. Why is that important? Because if it's revealed before the migration, then it's only talking about the open disbelievers of Mecca. If it's revealed entirely after the migration, then it's talking about the hypocrites. Right? They're talking about the hypocrites. But again, the miracle of this surah is that it's talking about both types of people. The people that are openly disbelievers and the people that are hypocrites, meaning pretending to be Muslims, as it did in the time of Medina, because it was advantageous to be a Muslim at that time because of the political strength the Muslims had. So if it's referring to the open disbelievers of Mecca, then it's basically being sarcastic. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, because they were doing acts of worship, right? They would put any idol they want in the Kaaba and they would go and worship it. So Allah is almost saying that is destruction and a valley in hellfire waits for those who are worshipping in this manner. Right? الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, those who are heedless of their worship, meaning they're not even really worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first place. And if it's referring to the hypocrites, and it's referring to both, the hypocrites who are pretending to be Muslim, then it's woe unto those who pray, meaning those who are heedless of their prayer, being the ones that just pretend to pray or are not taking care of their prayer. And what's an important thing that happens here is there is a change from the singular to the plural. Have you seen the one who? Right? That is the one who does this to the orphan. He is the one who doesn't give the poor person his food. And then here, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, it changes to the plural. So destruction to those who pray. That's plural, those who pray. So this is also showing us that even though it may be talking about one specific person or a few specific people in Makkah at that time, it still applies to every single person that meets this criteria. It still applies to every single person that meets this criteria. And then Allah says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, those who are heedless of their prayer. And the Mufassirin here, they say something very interesting. They say, Alhamdulillah الَّذِي لَمْ يَقُلْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ وَقَالَ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ. We praise Allah that He didn't say, in their prayer they are heedless, but He said, of their prayer they are heedless. Because there's a huge difference. When you're standing in your prayer, and sometimes your mind goes left and right. Sometimes you forget, right? Sometimes you forget where you are. You pray 3 and you're not sure if I pray 2 or 3. This is being heedless in your prayer. And this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. So the threat does not apply to being heedless in your prayer, but it's heedless of your prayer. So what does it mean being heedless of your prayer? Either you don't pray at all, the person who doesn't pray at all, right? The person who prays but doesn't pray on time as a habit. So, he prays Dhuhr with Isha as a habit all the time. He just doesn't care about it when the time comes in, something happens, he doesn't make it a priority, and he prays it at a later time, as a habit, continuously. Or the person who doesn't pray until the time is almost running out, as a habit, habitually. So you're sitting, and the time for Dhuhr is about to go out, oh, it's almost time to go, then you get up and pray. Right? So basically, not giving importance to the salah, not making it a priority, this is being heedless of the salah, of your worship, of your prayer. And this was the habit of the munafiqeen, the hypocrites in Medina, who pretended to be Muslim. So they weren't Muslim, they didn't believe in any of this, but it was advantageous to be Muslim. So when it was come time to prayer, they did it just to show off, right? Just to show the people that we're still Muslim, because if they didn't do it, it'd be a huge sign you're not praying. At the time of the Prophet, you're not praying, that's a huge deal, right? Why, are you a Muslim or you're not a Muslim? So they would have to pray to show that they're Muslim, but that's the only reason they would pray, right? So they denied the akhirah, they denied the hereafter, and they only did it, and that's why Allah says in the next ayah, الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ, those who are just showing other people. They're showing off, right? Or they're showing other people. They do it for show other people. Now this is either connected with salah and worship, meaning they're worshipping Allah just to show other people, or it means that anything they do as a Muslim is just to show other people. They're not really doing it. Right? They're not really doing it. And then he says, وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَعُونَ, and they withhold simple acts of kindness. Simple acts of kindness. And this is where the name of the surah comes from, al-ma'un. So al-ma'un, it means any form of assistance. Some of the scholars, some of the Sahaba actually refer to it as the zakat, the charity that we have to pay. But more commonly it refers to everyday household items that you have, that people may come and ask you, hey, can I borrow this, can I borrow that? So somebody comes over and says, can I have like a tablespoon of sugar? Right? And then وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَعُونَ, people who would forbid even this kind, don't even help people in these kinds of things. They are so miserly, so greedy. These are the same people that are treating the orphan this way. When somebody comes and says, hey, can I borrow a pot, I want to cook something, you just say no, you can't have that. Right? Or they come over and say, can I borrow your axe, or can I borrow your, nowadays, we borrow each other's tools and things like that. You just tell them no. For no reason. You have no loss. No loss in this whatsoever. They're not borrowing money from you, they're just asking for simple little things. Some of the Sahaba, some of the companions, they said it's water. If somebody comes and asks you for a glass of water and you tell them no, why would you tell them no? There's no reason to do that. Things that you can't really be cheap in, but you're being cheap with them, this is what it's referring to. يَمْنَعُونَ الْمَعُونَ. They prevent people from even having simple little things that they're not doing. What's 1 teaspoon of sugar going to cost you? That you help your neighbor out if he needs a teaspoon of sugar or something, right? But they would prevent that. They would not even do that. Now at the time, the hypocrites of Mecca would hate the Muslims so much, they're just pretending to be Muslims, that they would not help them out in this way. So when Allah revealed this ayah, He's exposing the behavior of the hypocrites. He's telling you, when people behave like this, there's a problem. There's a problem with their Islam. And what this surah is telling us also is that these are the signs you have to watch out for. If any Muslim is behaving in a way where he's treating people who are weak with complete disregard and in a harsh manner, if he's not helping feeding the people, especially when you have the wealth that's given to us by Allah, and you're not helping out the poor in some way, right? If you are not taking care of your worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're only doing these things just to show off, and only Allah knows that as well, and if you're even not helpful and kind enough for people when it comes to simple little things, there's a problem, right? For the believers who are sincere believers, but they're acting this way, there's a huge problem, right? If we're having trouble praying salah on time, that means, are we giving it the priority that we're supposed to give it? Are we or are we not? Right? This should set off a red light in your head. That maybe every day I pray Asr at the very last time. Why? Why is it that I'm doing that? Right? Why am I acting like these people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described in this way? And just to finish off, Ustad Numan Ali Khan, he mentions a very, very beautiful theme to this surah. He talks about how in the beginning of the surah, it talks about, have you seen the one who rejects the accountability that's going to happen in the hereafter? Right? This is referring to the self. Right? This is referring to your heart and your iman that you have in your heart. If you reject the fact that you're going to be held accountable for what you do. فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدْعُ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. He is the one that treats the orphan harshly. He is the one that doesn't give the poor people their food. This is treatment of other people. Right? These are crimes you commit against other people. And then فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Right? Woe to those who in their prayer are heedless of their prayer. This is something to do with Allah. You have these three dimensions here of the self, of the community, the people around you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have relationships with all three. And it takes all three to make a successful believer. Right? You can't have one and ignore the other. And this is interesting why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how He puts this in all the surahs, and in many of the surahs in the Quran, or when you read the Quran in general, you see this coming up all the time. From worshipping Allah, to what you believe, to how you treat other people. Because all three of these things are extremely important. So if you have somebody who says, well, I'm a good person, I give a lot of charity, what does it matter if I don't pray? Right? What does it matter if I don't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is not the balance that Allah wants us to have. Right? This is imbalanced. At the same time, if you have somebody who says his prayers all the time, who gives a lot of charity, but he treats people in a very harsh way. When somebody comes and asks him or her for something, no, sorry, can't do that for you. Right? A very harsh way. This is not treating people properly. This is not giving them the ma'un, right? The simple things that you can give them and not lose anything over. So what benefit is your prayer if you're not treating the people in the proper way that Allah wants you to treat them? Right? So this is the balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to have. A balance of giving Allah His rights, giving the people their rights. Recognizing that we have to treat people in the proper way so that we can benefit in our Islam as well. So this is the kind of the formula that Allah gives us for a successful Muslim. That you take care of yourself, your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your belief in the akhirah, your consciousness that I'm going to be judged afterwards. You treat the people the way they're supposed to be treated. You help the poor, you help the orphan, you help those in need. And you make sure your worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on time and the way it's supposed to be. And the best way that you can possibly do it. This is how we get the balance of having, being a successful Muslim, and they're all related with each other. They can't separate. You can't be one and not the other. You have to do your best to be good in all these three areas. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this short surah, in just 7 ayat, covers all three of these things. That ends the tafsir of the surah, inshallah. If there are any questions, comments, or points of discussion, we can take those, inshallah. The sister side as well. Yes, brother.
You said, وَلَا يَعُدُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. You said that the way the sentence is constructed is that it's ta'am is the right of the...
the food belongs to the poor person.
Can you explain that a little bit? Like how
so
the sentence is constructed?
The structure of the sentence, ta'amul miskin, means if you just took those two words and said ta'amul miskin, that means the food of the poor person. That means it's his food or her food.
Oh, it's off is there, that's right.
Yeah, it belongs to them. So what Allah is saying is that وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ, you're not encouraging others to give them the food that belongs to them. Meaning the wealth that you have, you're supposed to use it to help the poor, to feed the poor. Right? And we have this already as a Muslim. We have the zakah, which the charity, the 2.5% that we have to give on our wealth to go to the needy. At the end of Ramadan, we give food. At the end of the Hajj, we give meat, right? So this is something that we are forced to give from our wealth. It's a right that we have to give, right? So it's already there, but it's something that we can always take better care of and do more of. It's a right that belongs to them as well.
So it's also like this, I also said that not only giving but also encouraging others is part of the
Yes.
responsibility.
So the ayat says, and he doesn't encourage upon giving the poor the food that belongs to them. And the ulama, they say, the way the sentence is structured, it obviously means he doesn't encourage himself, nor does he encourage other people. Like he doesn't tell other people, you should feed the poor, you should help them, you should do this. Right? He doesn't do it himself, nor does he tell other people to do it. So this is, and this is why it's important to understand that when you're giving charity, when you're giving sadaqah, encouraging other people is also a part of it as well. Right? Making sure your family members are doing what they're supposed to, making sure the community is, your friends that hey, make sure you help this out, you help that out. Alhamdulillah, we tend to do this, right? When there's a cause, we share it and say, hey, this is a cause, here's a charity, you can give to them, this will help. All of this is encouraging. All of this, and especially if you give and you give in front of people to encourage them to give, that's also encouraging. But yet, the ayah says that he does not encourage giving the food of the poor people that belongs to them in the first place. So himself or others. He doesn't encourage himself, he doesn't encourage others.
Yes. Can you talk a little more about character is caught, not taught?
Yeah, so this is something interesting. We went at a Islamic school conference we was in. So we were talking about character education, right? How to, teach students to adopt better character. And so we had two schools of thought. One was that you have a character education program, which is very common. And the other was, the program doesn't matter. It's how the people that are always around the children are behaving. That's what the kids are going to pick up. And so this is the same thing if you look at the Prophet ﷺ, that he did encourage people to adopt certain things, but at the same time he always practiced. He always practiced that. So whenever somebody came to him, he would always help them out. If he couldn't help them out, he would say something nice. He would say something nice to them, right? And so he would give them advice. So for example, people were coming one day and asking him, and he kept giving his money, and then he was out of stuff to give. And so when somebody else came and asked, he told them, I will never stop giving you as long as I have something to give. But let me tell you something better, because now he doesn't have anything to give. So then he tells them to, make a remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do these things that'll help them as well. But it was the way he behaved and the way people saw him that had more of an impact on other people than just what he said. So this is how we define that, if you want to have someone behave in a good way, that you model that character yourself. That you make sure that you're acting in the right way, in the same way that you want to pass on. So specifically with children, it's if you want your children to do something properly, you do it properly. And spiritually, it's a spiritual thing that's what gets passed on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that your behavior have that effect. And we all can think of people that were just wonderful people, right? You think back, you can probably remember your favorite teacher, right? You remember your favorite teacher or someone in school? Maybe it's been a long time, I don't know. But people can remember one person or either a teacher or somebody in their life that had an impact on them. And when you ask them why, usually the answer is, they were really nice. Or it's something that they did for you or something that you saw about them that had an impact. When you ask kids their favorite teachers, it's because, they're really nice to me. That's what they say. He was really nice or she was really nice to me. So that has an impact. The way you behave has more of an impact than what you say. And even in some of the speaking that we have a group here that goes and speaks about Islam, and some of their statistics, they tell us that whenever you go and you speak to people about Islam, they remember maybe about 5% of the stuff that you said, but they always remember how you made them feel when you said it. Right? What they remember is how they felt afterwards, and how they felt with the interaction they had with you. That's what sticks with them more than what you said. The content doesn't really, always hold up. It's how they felt afterwards. Did they have a good experience? Did they have a bad experience? That depends on how you as a presenter behave. Right? Are you friendly? Are you cordial? Are you kind? Are you nice with your words? Are you polite? All of that has an effect. So this is what has more of an impact. That the way you are will affect other people more than what you say. So practice what you preach and all these kinds of things we have. That's really the essence of that phrase that somebody else came up with. That character is caught, not taught. Yeah. Any other questions? Or on the sister side, any other questions? Yes, Sister Hassan. Sorry. Brother
So,
Hassan, no.
if someone like finds themselves praying Salah better when they're around people, does that invalidate it?
No, it doesn't invalidate your salah. So that depends. If you feel great because you know somebody's watching you, then maybe there's a problem, right? And again, it all goes back to you know what's inside your heart, right? You can always tell what's inside your heart. You can always figure it out. So if you're praying and you purposefully are making your salah better, right? Because somebody else walked in the door. So if you're praying, and you've heard this example many times, you're praying, somebody else walks in the door, you straighten up a little bit, you start making your voice more beautiful. That you might question what it is you're doing, right? But if the thing is that if you want to improve your prayer and it just happens that people aren't, then you know why you're doing it. And this is why these kinds of things only Allah will judge you for, because only He knows also what's inside your heart, right? So it doesn't invalidate it, but you always want to keep in mind why did I do that, right? Why did I do that? Do you pray the same way when you're by yourself, or do you rush through the salah when you're by yourself, or as opposed to when you're in front of people, you make sure you take your time and you do the whole thing. So if this is a habit, then you might want to question yourself, what am I doing? You see what I'm saying? So when you're by yourself, it's actually tougher because there's nobody else around. It's actually, most people might end up just praying faster or cutting their salah short or things like that. So it's how you behave when you're by yourself that lets you know if you're sincere when you're in public. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not going to show up anymore? No, I'm just kidding.
It's weird. You get a different type of concentration if somebody pop up when you are making salah. Like I had to do it at the airport.
Yeah.
That's gotta get it done. It's Fajr coming in. I gotta get on the plane. I gotta do it. So
Yeah.
it just feels different when you know everybody's around. But
Yeah, but it's what that feeling is that matters, right?
Yeah.
It's what is that feeling that's different? Is it because, I'm doing something in front of other people, maybe that'll have an impact? That's not necessarily insincerity, but maybe I should make it perfect, right? Beautifying this. Just going out of your way to make it look good for somebody else, that's problematic. But if you're just, that doesn't mean when you're praying in front of people, like, mess up your salah completely, because that's the opposite. That's another way of showing off. There is a hidden way of showing off, and the hidden way of showing off is purposefully ruining your worship or making yourself look not good enough. That's the scholars call it the hidden form of showing off. So you go and you're like, I'm just like this. I'm not anything. I'm not. You over-humblify, if that's a word. You over-humblify yourself, and thinking that you're trying to lower yourself in the eyes of people. But in reality, what you're doing is trying to get either sympathy or something. It's the hidden form of showing off. So when you've been blessed with something, if you've been blessed with a good voice and you're praying, use your good voice. It's a gift from Allah, right? If you've been blessed with having nice clothes, wear the nice clothes. That's not showing off. It's just, it's thanking Allah for what He's given you, right? But if you have been blessed with nice clothes, but then you wear, rags just to make it look like that I don't have, that's problematic. So whatever you've been blessed with, use it and use it proudly. But just make sure you're not falling into the hidden form of showing off, which is making yourself seem low and less and humble and things like that purposefully, which is you don't have to do that. You don't have to ever demean yourself or lower yourself. You're proud for who you are, and you represent yourself the way Allah has blessed you with, and that's it. It's striking a balance, inshallah. Any other questions?
Quick comments. The surah, can you take it in the reverse order so you don't treat them often or you don't share your well, really you don't believe in the Diyum Din?
That's where it becomes, that's where the lesson is, to compare ourselves with the surah, right? Do we really, there's one thing that says, yes, we know it's going to happen. That's part of iman. So the word iman doesn't actually mean just the belief itself, which is the interesting point. The word faith in English means the belief, right? If you have faith, you believe. But that doesn't mean you're going to do anything about it. So the word iman in itself, the Arabic word, means you believe in it, you declare it, and you act upon it. So all three things make up iman. So we may have partial iman because we understand that it's going to happen, but it may not be complete iman if we're not actualizing, if we're not putting it into practice. So while we may not be completely, into this category where we deny the Yawm al-Din, partially we might have problems. Because in certain areas of our lives, we might have issues. Right? We might not realize that in this area of my life, I will be questioned and I'll act however I want. Right? Whereas other areas, we might pray and give zakah, even sincerely. Right? So the Muslim, the believer, we use these things as like a balance. Right? Because it's not just black and white. It's not just either you believe or you don't believe. right? It's either you believe and you accept and you act on it, or you believe and yet you don't act on it. There's something that's holding you back. Either you're like, for the word kuffar that's used for the Quraysh specifically, right? They understood that this was the truth. They knew this was the truth. The uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Talib, the one the last one, so it was Abu Talib, right? Abu Talib, or Abdul Muttalib. Abu Talib. Abu Talib. So he was the one that was with him. He loved him. At his deathbed, the Prophet ﷺ told him, say La ilaha illallah, and I can argue on behalf of Allah for you. And he was about to say it, because he knew, he even told the Prophet ﷺ before, I understand what you're preaching is the truth. But his ego was so strong about how other people would think of him, that his brothers reminded him, are you going to leave the religion of your father? And for the Arabs, that was, your tribal identity, your father, your who you are, and keeping that whatever traditions they had was so huge for them, that he let that interfere even with his belief. So he understood it was the truth, but he refused to acknowledge it. He refused to act by it. So this is kind of where we have to balance ourselves with, that we may believe in it, we may know it's going to happen, but are we really aware that we need to act on it? Are we acting on it or not? So it doesn't mean we're completely disbelievers, right? But it means that we have something that we have to work on, right? Because if we realize that we have these problems, then now we know we have an area we need to fix. And that's why these things are there. That's why the surah is there to help us realize, okay, maybe we're in trouble. Let's fix this part and let's make this better. Right? This is why you have continuous study of the Quran. Right? So you have this balance between fear and hope. That yes, okay, maybe a red light popped up for me. That maybe my salah isn't so great. Maybe I don't do it on time all the time. But I know I can fix that. Right? And I know I believe in the akhirah, so I will fix that. So when we have hope and we move forward, and we try to take care of those things. But very good point. Yeah, if you go backwards with this, it's a very powerful point that you see this, and at the end you read that person doesn't believe in the judgment. And yeah, it's a powerful message that would definitely be delivered. Jazakallah khair. Any other comments or questions?
One question I had was, the verse "Fawailul lil Musallin."
Yeah.
So the letter fa, like sometimes we use it for then.
Yeah.
There is a condition, then this thing, or just the word then. So does it have any significance here? Like why
Yes.
the word fa?
So the fa, the letter fa, it's used to describe or give description of something that's been mentioned first. So if Allah mentioned the person who rejects the deen, and then continues to say فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ وَلَا طَعَامُ الْمِسْكِينِ. So the fa is related to what's been described. So if something has been described already, and it's with a fa, it's also describing that same thing.
Okay.
So, for example, النازعات والنازعات غرقا والناشطات نشطا والسابحات سبحا فالسابقات. So this is referring to the previous thing that's been described.
Okay.
Right? So that's kind of the connection. So the fa actually tells us that whatever is being mentioned is connected with what's before it.
Okay.
It's connected with what's before it. So in this surah, all of it is connected with the first ayah.
Interesting.
That, this is the person that rejects the deen. And because of this is the kind of person he can turn into. He can turn into the kind of person that's just rude to the orphan, that doesn't give people the food they deserve, the person that when it even comes to worshiping Allah is just doing whatever he wants, doesn't really care. So all of this is related to the fact that first ayah, that he's the one that rejects it. Challenging question, mashallah.
Because he rejects the deen. Did I pronounce that right?
The deen, yeah.
The deen.
The word deen has many meanings. So deen, we use it in common language to mean the religion. It's called deen. But specifically in certain cases in the Quran, it's referring to the day of judgment. So here it's referring to the day of judgment. And in Al-Fatiha, the first surah that we read, Malik Yawmiddin, the owner of the day of judgment. So ad-din is also the day of judgment. So the idea is when you hear this word in this context is, I'm going to be judged. I have to answer for what I do. I'm going to be held responsible. There are consequences for everything that I do. And then in the more common, everyday term, deen means religion. So this is our deen, this is our religion. No questions from the sister side? Okay, inshallah. We'll end there. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وجزاكم الله خير. Apologize for the screen. Acting up.